I watched my daughter Sarah's car disappear down the driveway of Shady Grove Nursing Home, her brake lights flashing briefly before she turned onto the main road. Just like that, drop Dad off at the home, tick the box, and move on with life. 75 years of living, raising her after Emily died, and it all ended with a quick kiss on the cheek and, "I'll visit soon, Dad." She didn't even stay to help me unpack the single suitcase containing what remained of my life. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. I wasn't surprised by what Sarah had done. The signs had been there for months. The impatient sighs when I took too long to answer a question, the not-so-subtle pamphlets about senior living options appearing on my coffee table, the hushed phone conversations with her husband Mark that stopped when I entered the room. What did surprise me was the timing. My birthday. She chose my 75th birthday to drive me to this place that smelled of industrial cleaner and dying dreams. "Mr. Wilson, I'm Nancy, your care coordinator." A woman in blue scrubs appeared, clipboard in hand, her practiced smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Let's get you settled in your room." I followed her down a hallway lined with generic landscape paintings, my thoughts drifting back through the years. After Emily died of cancer when Sarah was only 12, it had been just the two of us against the world. I'd worked 2 jobs to put food on the table, accounting during the day and night shifts at the gas station. When Sarah showed academic promise, I sold our family home and moved us to a tiny apartment so she could attend a better school district. "This is your room, Mr. Wilson," Nancy said, opening a door to reveal a small space with a hospital-style bed, a dresser, and a single window overlooking the parking lot. "Bathroom is through that door. Dinner is at 5 in the main dining room." "Thank you," I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. When she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, the springs creaking under my weight. Sarah had thrived in that new school. Straight A's, debate team captain, full scholarship to NYU. I'd attended every event, every parent-teacher conference, worked overtime to buy her prom dress. I still remember her graduation day. How proud I'd been watching her accept her diploma, knowing that all the sacrifices had been worth it. But something changed after she married Mark and moved into the corporate world. Success became her new religion, and I became, what? An obligation, a problem to solve. The father who didn't quite fit into her carefully curated life of business lunches and charity galas. "Knock, knock." An elderly man with a walker appeared in my doorway. "New neighbor, eh? I'm Frank, down the hall in 112. Bingo tonight if you're interested." "Thanks, Frank. I'm Tom. Not sure I'm up for bingo just yet." "Suit yourself. Been here 3 years. It ain't the Hilton, but the people are decent enough." He shuffled away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. 3 years ago, when I had my first minor stroke, Sarah had flown in from Chicago, stayed for 2 days, and hired a part-time nurse before flying back. 6 months ago, when I fell and broke my hip, she'd started talking about safety concerns and better care options. I slowly unpacked my suitcase, placing the few family photos I'd brought on the dresser. There was Sarah at her college graduation, Sarah on her wedding day, Sarah with her husband in front of their lake house. I realized with a pang that I wasn't in a single one of these recent photos. When had I become a spectator in my own daughter's life? The window in my room faced west, and I watched the sun begin its descent behind the trees. Night was coming, my first night in this place that would likely be my last home on earth. But what Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that this was exactly what I had prepared for. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and pulled out a small USB drive. It contained everything I needed for what would happen next. With a grim smile, I tucked it back into my pocket and prepared for dinner. The dining room buzzed with the sound of metal utensils against plastic plates and the murmur of subdued conversations. I sat at a table with Frank and 2 women who introduced themselves as Doris and Mabel. "First night's the hardest," Doris said kindly, passing me the salt. "Gets easier." "How long have you been here?" I asked. 3 years in August. My son lives in Seattle, too far to visit much. My daughter's only 20 minutes away, I said, but I suspect that's still too far for regular visits. Mabel snorted. My kids dropped me off 5 years ago. Visit on Christmas, maybe Easter if I'm lucky. Rest of the time, I might as well be invisible. Frank shrugged. That's why we make our own family here. Thursday night poker in the rec room. You should join us, Tom. After dinner, I returned to my room and pulled out my phone. I had one missed call from Sarah, probably checking to make sure I hadn't escaped. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my email and sent a pre-written message to my attorney, Benjamin Harris. All it said was, "Proceed with Plan B. Tom." The response came within minutes. "Confirmed. Will execute tomorrow morning." I slept surprisingly well that night, better than I had in months. There's a certain peace that comes with knowing you've taken back control of your narrative. The next morning, after a bland breakfast of rubbery eggs and toast, I was summoned to the front desk. Nancy stood there, looking slightly confused. "Mr. Wilson, there's someone here to see you. Mr. Harris?" Ben stood in the lobby, his leather briefcase in hand, looking every bit the successful attorney he was. At 62, he was younger than me, but old enough to understand what I was doing and why. "Tom," he greeted me warmly. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" Nancy directed us to a small conference room used for family meetings. Once the door closed behind us, Ben opened his briefcase. "Everything's ready. The paperwork was filed this morning." He spread several documents on the table. "Your house has been officially donated to the Veterans Transitional Housing Program, with the stipulation that veterans with families get priority placement." I nodded, looking at the deed transfer. My 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs, the house Sarah had been pressuring me to sell for years, was no longer mine, but it wasn't Sarah's either. "The financial transfers are complete as well," Ben continued. "The education fund for underprivileged students has been established with $250,000. The Medical Research Foundation received the $300,000 for Alzheimer's research, and the remaining funds have been placed in the trust for your care, as specified." "And the letter?" Ben patted his breast pocket. "Right here. Do you want me to deliver it personally or should we mail it?" "I think this needs to be done in person. Sarah needs to see your face when she realizes what's happened." Ben nodded. "I'll go directly to her office after this." "Are you sure about this, Tom? It's not too late to change your mind." I looked out the window at the carefully manicured grounds of Shady Grove. An elderly woman was being pushed in a wheelchair by a nurse, her face turned up to the morning sun. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Ben. Sarah made her choice. Now she'll have to live with mine." As Ben packed up the documents, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For years, Sarah and Mark had been dropping hints about my house, how it was too much for one person, how the market was hot, how they could help me manage the proceeds. What they really meant was that my house and my savings were assets they were waiting to inherit. Ben left, promising to call me later with an update. I spent the morning exploring the facility, the small library, the garden, the recreation room where a few residents were watching a game show on TV. It wasn't as bad as I'd feared. There was a dignity to the place, at least. My phone rang at 2:17 p.m. Sarah. I let it go to voicemail. 3 minutes later, it rang again, and again. On the 4th call, I answered. "Dad!" Her voice was high, tight with panic. "What have you done? Mr. Harris just left my office. Is this some kind of joke?" "Hello, Sarah. No, it's not a joke. I've simply made arrangements for my assets. You've given away your house to strangers and most of your savings to charities." Her voice cracked on the last word, as if the concept was foreign to her. "Veterans aren't strangers, Sarah. They're people who sacrificed for others, something I understand quite well. But we talked about selling the house. You knew I was planning to use that money to what, Sarah? To buy that vacation home in Florida you and Mark have been eyeing. to invest in his brother's startup. The house was never yours to plan for. There was a long silence. When she spoke again, her voice was cold. You did this to punish me for the nursing home, didn't you? No, Sarah. I did this because over the past few years, you've made it very clear what matters to you, and it isn't me. That's not fair. I've been taking care of you since your stroke. No, you've been managing me. There's a difference. When was the last time you asked me about my day, my friends, my interests? When was the last time you visited without bringing up the house or my will or my care options? Another silence. I could almost hear her mind racing, calculating, adjusting to this new reality. I'm coming to get you, she finally said. This place was a mistake. You can stay with us until we figure things out. I laughed, a sound that surprised even me. No, Sarah, I'm staying here. The trust I've established will pay for my care for the rest of my life. You don't need to worry about me anymore, financially or otherwise. Dad, please, I have to go now. Bingo starts in 20 minutes, and Frank says the good seats fill up fast. I ended the call and turned off my phone. It felt good, better than good. It felt right. Frank was waiting for me in the hallway, his walker parked against the wall. Everything okay? You look like you just won the lottery. Better than that, I said. I just gave away the winning ticket to someone who'll appreciate it. The next morning, I was having coffee in the community room when Nancy appeared at my side. Mr. Wilson, your daughter is here to see you. Sarah stood in the doorway, her designer handbag clutched tightly against her chest like a shield. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usual perfect makeup missing. She looked like she hadn't slept. Can we talk? She asked quietly. I nodded toward the garden. Let's get some air. We walked in silence to a bench beneath a large oak tree. Residents in wheelchairs were enjoying the morning sun while nurses chatted nearby. Why? Sarah finally asked, her voice small. Why would you give away everything you worked for? I studied my daughter's face, trying to see the little girl who used to climb into my lap for bedtime stories. She was in there somewhere, beneath the hardened exterior of ambition and materialism. Because it was mine to give, Sarah, just like it was your choice to bring me here on my birthday. She flinched. I didn't mean the timing was just convenient, I supplied. The house closing was scheduled for next week, wasn't it? You needed me out and settled somewhere before you could finalize the sale. Her silence was answer enough. I found the listing, Sarah, 3 weeks ago. My house, my home, listed by Harrison Realty, Mark's cousin's company. Dad, we were going to tell you once everything was finalized. We didn't want you to worry about the details. The details, I repeated, like the fact that you were selling my home out from under me, that you had already decided how my assets would be distributed while I was still alive. She looked down at her hands. We were trying to help. The money from the house would have provided for your care here, and left plenty for that boat Mark wants, and the kitchen renovation, and Aspen for Christmas. Her head snapped up. How did you... I overheard you on the phone last month, planning how to spend my money before I was even gone. Tears filled her eyes. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Sarah, and that's why I did what I did. Not to punish you, but to remind you of what matters. I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. It's not a check or a deed or anything you can cash. It's something more valuable. She took the envelope with trembling hands and opened it. Inside was a single photograph, Sarah at age 12, sitting on my shoulders at the state fair, both of us laughing, our faces illuminated by fireworks. That was 3 months after your mother died, I said quietly. Remember what you told me that night? A tear slid down her cheek. That we were going to be okay because we had each other. We were okay, weren't we? Through all of it. The small apartments, the second-hand clothes, the scholarship applications. We made it work because we had each other. Sarah stared at the photo, her shoulders beginning to shake. I'm so sorry, Dad. I don't know when I became this person, This person who would put her father in a nursing home on his birthday to facilitate a house sale. Money changes people, I said gently, or rather it reveals who they truly are. What happens now? She asked, wiping her eyes. I can't undo what's been done. No, you can't. The house belongs to the Veterans Program now. The money is in irrevocable trusts, but the future, our future, that's still unwritten. I took her hand in mine. I'm not angry anymore, Sarah. Disappointed, yes, but not angry. And I'm not doing this to cut you out of my life. I'm doing it to help you remember what kind of person you used to be, what kind of person I know you still are, somewhere inside. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she whispered. Probably not, I agreed. But that's the thing about love, Sarah. It's not about deserving, it's about choosing. Every day we make choices about how we treat the people we claim to love. I've made mine. Now it's your turn. We sat in silence for a long while, watching the residents in the garden. Finally, Sarah spoke. Can I come visit you tomorrow? Maybe bring lunch. It was a small step, but it was something. I'd like that. As she stood to leave, she hesitated, then leaned down and wrapped her arms around me in a real hug, the first one I'd felt from her in years. Happy birthday, Dad, she whispered. I'm sorry I forgot what that means. After she left, I returned to my room and looked at the few possessions I'd brought with me. The material wealth I'd accumulated over a lifetime was gone now, distributed to causes that would put it to good use. What remained was something more essential, the hope that my daughter might find her way back to the person she once was. Frank knocked on my door, poking his head in. Poker tonight? You in? I smiled. Absolutely. 3 months later, Sarah visits me twice a week. Sometimes she brings her husband, who looks at me differently now, with respect rather than calculation. We talk about real things. Her work challenges, my new friends here, books we've read. She's volunteering at the Veterans Housing Program that now occupies my old house, teaching financial literacy classes on weekends. The money is gone, but something more valuable has taken its place. My daughter has remembered who she is, and that, I realize now, was the purpose of my plan all along. Not revenge, but redemption. Yesterday, she brought me a small cake for our belated birthday celebration. As I blew out the single candle, she asked what I wished for. Nothing, I told her truthfully. I already have everything I need. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, just click on the box on the screen. Thank you so much for listening.